morning. It's a June 12th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. Let's begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. We start with Japan's nuclear wastewater discharge test, which begin today. Despite opposition from local fishermen, the Tokyo Electric Power Company will test a system used for releasing Fukushima wastewater by flushing clean water and seawater in an underwater tunnel. Ukraine says it has retaken villages in the Donetsk region as a part of its counterattack, but Russian forces claim they repelled multiple attacks. K-pop boy group Stray Kids has made it to #1 on Billboard's main albums chart for the third time. Their third studio album, 5 Star, makes the group the second K-pop act to hit #1 on the chart after BTS. Starting today, Japan will carry out a 2-week test operation to discharge the Fukushima wastewater. Now, the plan is facing fierce opposition from local fishermen, as the trial could indicate that the release is imminent. Our Shin Se-byuk reports.
Starting Monday, Japan is carrying out a 2-week test run on the process of discharging nuclear contaminated water from the wrecked Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. This is according to Japan's local media, Fukushima TV, on Sunday, citing the plant's operator, the Tokyo Electric Power Company. During the test run, it will ensure the safety of the discharging process. Although there won't be any actual release, the start of the trial operations means a release could become imminent. Last week, Japan sent some 6,000 tons of seawater into a 1-kilometer-long underwater tunnel built in the nuclear power plant. This approach aims to mix the water, which has been decontaminated of all radioactive substances except tritium that's inseparable from water, with seawater and release it. Japan plans to have its water release system ready by the end of this month. A final report from the International Atomic Energy Agency on its inspection is expected in late June. Once everything is completed, Japan plans to release more than 1 million tons of contaminated water currently stored at the stricken power plant. Meanwhile, Japanese authorities are facing fierce opposition from local fishermen. Last Saturday, Japan's industry minister Yasutoshi Nishimura met with local fisheries representatives to seek their understanding for the plant release. Their representatives expressed grave concerns over the plan, saying the move is fueling anxiety about the future of fishing operations. To that, Nishimura said the government is to provide increased support to expand the consumption of fisheries products and that it will continue working to develop the nation's fisheries industries. Japan plans to release the contaminated water into the sea this summer, while pledging it would not dispose of the contaminated water without consent from concerned parties. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
Now, over in Ukraine, the country has claimed its first victory since its counteroffensives began. But Russia insists of successfully repelling the Ukrainian attacks. Our Lee Seung-ja has more.
Ukraine says it has taken control of 3 frontline villages in the western Donetsk region, marking its first major victories since its counteroffensives began a week ago. Footage on social media showed Ukrainian troops celebrating the villages they were able to take back. According to a Ukrainian military blogger, during a span of a week, Ukraine was able to take back around 95 square kilometers of territory. However, Ukrainian forces still have a long way to go before they reach Russia's main fortified defensive lines, including the southwestern part of Zaporozhye. Despite the claims of major victories in the 3 villages, Russia has yet to confirm the losses, instead announcing it had successfully repelled a number of Ukrainian assaults. Russia's defense ministry said Sunday that Russian forces had shot down a Ukrainian Su-25 fighter jet in the Kherson region, while adding that it had also repelled 3 attacks from Ukrainian forces in the Zaporozhye region. The ministry added that Ukraine attempted to attack one of its Navy ships in the Black Sea using 6 drones, but ultimately failed. Russia's state-run TASS news agency also reported that Russian forces destroyed Ukrainian howitzers and multiple rocket launchers. The news outlet also reported on a number of other successful military operations conducted by Russian forces against Ukraine to repel the counteroffensives. While it's still too early to say which side has the upper edge, according to the British Ministry of Defence's Defense Intelligence Department, Ukraine has carried out important operations in several key areas in the southeastern regions. 이승재, Arirang News.
President Yoon spent much of May focused on diplomacy, from multilateral summits to hosting leaders at his office. He switched the focus to domestic policies last week that value balanced regional growth. Our Kim Do-yeon reports.
South Korea has one of the fastest decreasing populations in the world, with small rural towns facing the risk of disappearing. And with the government and opposition lawmakers making clear the importance of promoting balanced regional growth, President Yoon has highlighted an underlying vision of his that has been no secret since his election.
저는 평소 지역 균형 발전 전략으로 공정한 접근성, 또 재정 권한 강화, 그리고 지역의 특화된 산업을 지역 스스로 선택해서 결정하는 이 세 가지가 균형 발전의 기본이라고 생각을 해왔습니다.
And this past week, the president put his words into action. On Monday, he went to the western port city, Incheon, where the new overseas Korean agency opened up.
전 세계에서 민간 경제 외교 사절로 활약 중인 재외동포의 네트워크 허브가 될 재외동포청은 인천이 글로벌 도시로 성장하는 데 큰 동력이 될 것입니다.
On Wednesday, he went to Cheongju City for the groundbreaking ceremony of a high-speed railroad.
5성의 철도 산업 클러스터를 조성하고 기존 생명과학단지를 K바이오 스퀘어로 탈바꿈하여 충북을 국가 첨단 산업의 중심으로 육성할 것입니다.
On Friday, he went to Gangwon-do province, which has recently become a special self-governing province. This was one of the most notable domestic achievements that has support across the political divide. While the effects are not going to be immediate, experts say this is a forward-thinking move.
There are differences in each region, and the national government has limits in terms of managing them. Now, if local governments can make decisions for themselves, they will be able to consider different aspects themselves and make more reasonable decisions. But for the results to show, it'll take some time.
Next in line for an upgrade is Jeollabuk-do province, which in January will also become a self-governing province. The president shifted focus this week after spending the month of May engaged in diplomatic events, which earned him favorable approval ratings from his foreign policy achievements. So, why a sudden turn to domestic politics? Pundits are pointing to the general elections next April.
He needs to boost his approval rating for the general elections next year, and in that case, he needs to win the hearts of the voters in different regions. However, if he does that too close to the election, he will get criticized by the opposition, and there are legal limits, so he is working on it now.
Experts also say that while much of these policies have been supported by both parties, it is likely that the general public will remember the president's role. And there's one related key achievement that could yet come as we wait to see if Busan wins the bid to host the 2030 World Expo. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
North Korea had set a 12-day window for the launch of its satellite-carrying space rocket. With one failed attempt at putting the satellite into orbit on May 31st, but there was no second try as the window expired on Sunday. What is the regime up to? We're joined by Lieutenant General retired Chun In-bum for more. Good morning.
Good morning.
Now, the notice period was between the start of May 31st and the start of June 11th. Now, that's over. Does that mean no new launch in the near future?
Not at all. It just means that the North Koreans have been unsuccessful in finding and fixing the problem that they confronted during the last launch. I'm sure that the North Koreans will try to launch as soon as possible once these problems are rectified, and that other conditions such as weather and political situations meet their goals.
Right, the next launch could come without warning or notice, like the North Korean leader's sister Kim Yo-jong said a couple of weeks ago. Now, South Korea's top office said Seoul is not letting its guard down, and the Japanese government has extended an order to destroy any North Korean ballistic missile or rocket that threatens its territory. Now, why is that? Why are the two countries on such high alert?
So the North Koreans have made a bad situation worse by declaring that they will not be notifying the international community of a launch, which means that it can happen anytime, and therefore we have to be on the alert all the time. And if the launch occurs, as it probably will, without any kind of notice, it could lead into another type of accident that not even the North Koreans have intended, and could cause fatalities within the region. So in order to prevent this, of course, neighboring countries like South Korea and Japan are on high alert. And in the case of a debris or even the rocket itself landing in their population's area, they're prepared to shoot it down.
Right, so just because the notice period is over doesn't mean that they've let go of their nuclear or spy satellite ambitions.
Yes.
Then, according to 38 North over the weekend, satellite imagery shows movement that could mean preparation for a possible engine test of a satellite. Tell us about that movement. Could that be for the second spy satellite launch?
Yes, it could be for another preparation for another launch, because we now estimate that the failure of the first launch was because of its engines. So this activity is probably in relation to finding and fixing that problem. The real problem, though, is that whatever they're testing with their engines, it can be used for military purposes. That's why the whole notion of North Korea launching a so-called peaceful satellite is a problem for us.
Right, because those satellites could be a threat to the international community. That's why we are all staying on high alert. Now, there are reports that China is also working to find and retrieve the debris of the fallen North Korean rocket. Why is China doing that? I mean, isn't it illegal to transfer such debris to North Korea?
Well, for one thing, the debris has landed in international waters. So any country with the intent and capability to retrieve the debris is within their legal bounds. Now, to your specific question, if the Chinese were going to return the technology or the retrieved debris to North Korea, that would be certainly not legal. And morally, it would be against the stability of the region. So I hope that they will not be doing this. But right now, North Korea has no legal rights to the debris, even to the debris in international waters, because they're not actively trying to retrieve it themselves.
Right, the rocket itself belongs to North Korea, but the debris in the West belongs to nobody for now, right?
Yes.
Then, before we let you go, why is China seeking to retrieve the debris? Is it because it will transfer that to the North? What's their purpose?
They're probably as curious as we are as to the extent of the technology of the North Koreans. And if anybody is able to find the payload, the actual satellite, that would be great. I mean, we would be able to know the extent of North Korea's capabilities in that field. But whatever we find, and we will find it, it will help us to understand North Korea.
Right. Literally, all eyes are on that debris in the West Sea. Thank you always for your insight. We appreciate it.
Thank you again.
South Korea's U20 football team took 4th place at FIFA U20 World Cup in Argentina after losing to Israel 3-1 in the early hours of Monday morning local time. South Korean captain Lee Seung-won scored a 24th minute penalty to level the game after Israel had taken the lead after 19 minutes. Israel fired home 2 late second-half goals to finish the tournament in the 3rd place. The South Korean side will return home on Wednesday. Meanwhile, Uruguay became champions by beating Italy by a 0-0 in the final. K-pop boyband Stray Kids has topped U.S. Billboard's main albums chart for the 3rd time with their 3rd full-length album, 5 Star. According to Billboard on Sunday, Stray Kids' new album went straight to the top of the Billboard 200 chart for this week with 249,500 equivalent album units earned in the U.S. Now, this makes them the only Korean act other than BTS to claim the top spot on the Billboard 200 chart more than 2 times. They previously reached #1 in March last year with the EP Ordinary and in October with the EP Maxident. Tomorrow, June 13th, marks the 10-year anniversary of much-beloved K-pop superstars, BTS. From their debut as a 7-member group to their unique take on solo albums, our Song Yujin looks back at the past decade.
Everybody, 단체! 둘, 셋, 팍! 다! 안녕하세요, 방탄소년단입니다. 같이 인사 좀 드릴게요.
This appearance on Arirang TV was just 3 months after their debut, but fast forward almost a decade. And BTS has blossomed into a 5-time Grammy nominee, Times Entertainer of the Year, music chart toppers, and the most followed music group on Instagram. But BTS's success didn't happen overnight. When the boys released their debut track, No More Dream, in 2013, they weren't signed with one of the big 3 record companies in Korea, known for producing hit K-pop groups since the 90s. Their rebellious bad boy looks and aggressive hip-hop music presented a stark contrast to the clean-cut, romance-singing boy groups K-pop fans were accustomed to. It was actually social media that first rose the boys to stardom.
And even before their debut, they were talking with their fans. They always showed insight into who they are. They always had their, nowadays we see Jungkook going on a live stream with 10 million people, and back then they were doing it for just a few people on YouTube. But it's always been that way. And
This not only expanded BTS's reach, but also fostered a deep connection with their fans, the ARMY. But success wouldn't have lasted long without good music. Unlike most K-pop songs written by renowned composers, BTS members actively contributed as songwriters and producers.
But you become a voice of a generation because you really put yourself out there, or you put music out there that is very both personal and relatable. That's what makes a great pop song or a great, popular hit. So every person can listen to it and feel, oh, I feel that way. And
the song Love Myself really empowered me. I had a difficult time at work back then, and the song gave me a lot of comfort.
Equally important is the fact that all 7 members have remained together until now.
Unlike many K-pop groups that pursue unique projects, BTS has always worked together other than releasing solo work. This unity and strength are what define BTS.
Their songs and dances are really cool, and it's just great to see the strong bond between the members.
All this paved the way for other K-pop acts to shine on the global stage.
BTS has brought K-pop into the mainstream. K-pop used to be a niche music loved by enthusiasts, but it's now become a universal genre enjoyed worldwide like Latin or British pop.
No one could have predicted the immense scale of BTS's success 10 years ago. Although they're currently taking time off as a group, who knows what extraordinary accomplishments they'll achieve in the next 10 years. 송유진, 아리랑 뉴스.
Good morning, I'm Matthew Ashley, and we now turn over to stories from around the world. We begin in the Red Sea, where search teams are looking for 3 missing British tourists. Now, the tourists disappeared after the boat they were on suddenly caught fire on Sunday local time off the coastal city of Marsa Alam. Now, the boat was carrying 15 British tourists, 12 crew members and 2 guides. All passengers except the missing 3 have been rescued. The boat was on a 7-day dive cruise and was due to return to port on the day of the fire. According to a spokesperson for the boat's operator, the fire started while the boat was at a popular diving spot. Early investigations indicate that an electrical fault in the boat's engine room may have caused the fire. Now in Colombia, 4 children were found alive on Friday evening after surviving in the Amazon rainforest for 40 days. The children aged between 11 months and 13 years were stranded in the jungle after a private Cessna plane they were on crashed. A pilot and co-pilot died immediately, and the children's mother reportedly died 4 days later. The children were able to survive by eating cassava flour and fruit seeds. Rescue teams said that the children survived for so long due to their indigenous roots, which made them immune to certain diseases. They also knew how to find food and water. The search operation included over 100 Colombian Special Forces troops and more than 70 indigenous scouts. Now, moving over to sports, Novak Djokovic has broken the world record for the most Grand Slam titles ever won. The achievement comes after the 36-year-old Serbian won his 3rd French Open final on Sunday in Paris. Djokovic beat Norwegian Casper Ruud in straight sets. The men's world #1 previously shared the title of most Grand Slams won with Rafael Nadal. Meanwhile, in the women's event, Iga Swiatek also claimed her 3rd French Open win on Saturday for her 4th Grand Slam win. The world #1 seeded Polish player beat unseeded Czech Karolina Muchova in a 3rd set comeback after winning her 1st set and losing her 2nd. And finally, Ferrari claimed victory over the weekend at the 100th anniversary of the Le Mans 24 Hours race. It was a triumphant return to the endurance race for Ferrari, who hadn't competed at Le Mans since 1973. But the win at the Circuit de la Sarthe didn't come easy, as Ferrari had to battle against a competitive Toyota, which was aiming to clinch its 6th straight Le Mans title. Ferrari also had to overcome bad weather and a series of technical issues. But their 499P Le Mans hypercar, driven separately by 3 drivers in shifts, crossed the finish line with a lead of 1 minute 21 seconds ahead of 2nd place Toyota.
Good morning. We're getting more frequent passing rain since we moved into June. There were reports of a devastating lightning strike incident over the weekend. If you see lightning and hear the rumble of thunder, be sure to get inside right away. The new week kicks off with a chance of more passing rain with up to 50 millimeters of rain in the forecast. But precipitation could vary depending on the region. But until it starts to rain, skies will remain clear with very strong UV rays in most parts of the country. Ozone levels will be high in most regions except for Gangwon-do and Jeju. Morning temperatures are similar to yesterday, but the west coast and south coast were covered with thick fog. The afternoon highs will be similar to slightly lower than Sunday, with Seoul topping out at 27 degrees. Air quality will be decent nationwide all day today. More chances of rain are in the forecast early this week, while the temperature heat goes up as the week goes on. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That is all we have for this Monday morning. We'll be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.
I'm live. 저를 도와주시는 분들이
저희와 함께 해줄 수 있는 세션분
아무리 봐도 억지 텐션 같은데 아니라고 아무도 안 하는 거고.
좋아요.
This movie is called The Lee Families, and it actually was invited to the Cannes Movie Festival to compete.
I can't wait to see that.
Yeah, let's find out what this movie is about.
우리 어릴 적 살던 고향을 그것도 딸들도 아닌 고작 손자인 너한테!
Lotte takes a new leap beyond its boundaries. Our change will lead to better lives for all. New Lotte, the power of a better world. New today, better tomorrow. Lotte.
here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation. Making news just for you. It's June 12th here in Seoul. I'm Shin Yoon, and this is News Generation, where we make the news at Arirang's very own open studio. Every morning, we'll discuss the top issues and latest current affairs affecting people in their 20s and 30s. Joining me in the studio is Kim Xiang.
Happy Monday, yeah.
Good morning. And Nal Song.
Good morning, everyone.
All right, and both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. Earlier in May, a small plane crashed in the Amazon, killing 3 adults and leaving 4 children missing. After a long search and rescue, Colombian soldiers on Friday finally found the 4 siblings alive. The 4 braved the jungle for 40 days, surviving on cassava flour and fruits in the rainforest. The children were aged 13, 9, 4, and 11 months. We're now going to move on to our second story, shifting our focus to what happened here in Korea over the weekend. A lightning strike hit Yangyang Beach in Gangwon-do Province. The lightning hit 6 people on Saturday, some who had just come back from surfing and some who used an umbrella to rest by the shore. This killed a 36-year-old man and injured 5 others. Moving on to some lighter news. Last Tuesday, the 4th edition of the action role-playing game Diablo was released in Korea. Just 3 days into its release, it ranked the 3rd most popular game played at PC rooms. The number of people who looked for the game jumped by 2 percentage points during this period. Many users went on social media to say how they used their work holidays to go to PC rooms just to play the latest edition. Now we're going to take a closer look at the 3rd news item. Diablo 4's release was great news for PC room owners in Korea. According to the Korea Creative Content Agency, over the past 10 years, the number of people who visited PC rooms has actually dropped by more than half. But more PC room owners in the country told local media outlets how they're hoping to see yet another boom. At PC rooms, users can play the game for a much cheaper price, especially since they've been seeing a spike in customers since Diablo 4's release. Now, I'd like to focus our attention to what you guys think about gaming and whether you've actually been to PC rooms. I'd like to ask you now, do you think gaming is a popular and actually healthy hobby for our generation?
Well, it is definitely common for sure. I used to go to PC rooms with my brother, my husband, and we would kind of, spend the night there playing.
Spend the whole night?
The whole night. But I mean, I've never played Diablo, but yeah, it's kind of a fun way to, spend your weekend, if you will. But I don't know if I would take out a vacation day from work. But I think the rule of thumb is balance. Whether you're super addicted to it and can't live a normal life, then there's a little bit of a red flag there.
But I could totally relate with how you could stay there the whole night. Now that PC rooms have a lot of different food and beverages.
Diablo will also take whole weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a very long game. It goes on forever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It seems that you know a bit about gaming.
Yeah, I mean, it's been around for ages now. I think it was made by Blizzard, who made quite a bit of other big games as well. StarCraft, I think, is also made by Blizzard. I played a bit of StarCraft, national sport of South Korea, some might say. Back in the days, at least. Now Son's leading the football scene.
Yeah. So would you be able to relate with using paid days off just to go to PC rooms to play the latest edition of new games?
To be honest, I think that's quite a responsible thing to do. If you've got a job and if you want to spend time gaming and then, you got your job the next day, you've got to start early morning, you don't want to spend all night. If you use your paid holidays and, really just get into the game, spend a whole day, that does make sense. I approve of that myself. If I get into gaming like that, I would do that as well. PC bound's having a difficult time as well because during COVID, it's all locked down. None of them could go. A lot of them, I think, went out of business as well. So this might be a good opportunity for them to revive their business.
Especially since in Korea, the esports industry is growing exponentially as well. So we'll hopefully see more people head on to these PC rooms. Now, that was our news feed for this Monday. Let's move on to today's discussion topic. Today, we've chose a topic closely related to the intention and traits of our program. We're going to be talking about how Korea defines youth. Take a look at the screen to find out more. With longer life expectancy and better health care, it's hard to determine what we consider young. What does it mean to be young? Well, in Korea, the health ministry defines youth to be those between the ages 19 and 34. But local authorities have been flexible with this. Some extended the range of youth to the age of 45. Some have lowered the minimum age from 19 to 15. That's what NewsGen aims to look at today. 1. Why do people have different ideas behind what ages are considered youth? 2. What does our generation think is the appropriate age range to be called young? 3. How do other countries define youth, and why is this the case? NewsGen is all about delivering the thoughts and stories of young people, but how old do you have to be considered young? That seems to be an essential question for many authorities launching different welfare policies. So Xiong, before we go any deeper, could you tell us how South Korea defines youth?
Yes, I mean, when hearing the categorization of youth, you automatically think of biologically young people, including teenagers up to young adults. But official age group categorization seems to vary. For example, I've worked with the startup sector in Korea, which receives extended financial and technical support from government entities. And quite often I saw varying age limits depending on the host organization, which left room for potential confusion. I've organized a comparison of youth groups defined by law and local government authorities.
All right.
Let's have a look at the screen. Korea's Framework Act on Youth, implemented on August 2020, defines the official age of youth to be between 19 and 34. But according to the Office of Government Policy Coordination, depending on the support program, eligibility for youth support can go from 15 all the way up to 45.
Wow.
Now, this caused quite a lot of debate on whether it is fair to include conventionally older age groups in the youth category.
And as Xiong just mentioned, it seems to differ based on where you're living, whether you could be considered young enough to be youth. Could you explain to us a little bit more?
Yeah, for example, Ulsan was raising the standard of youth all the way up till age 39 from 35. And this would actually mean that they have extra 70,000 people who are considered youth in the category. And Jeollanam-do, which has the lowest population of youth, they already had it up till 39 and are now increasing it to age 45.
Wow.
And this increased the youth population by 143,000, which means 30% of their population is young.
Right.
And this means like there's a total of 58 different regions in Korea which adjusted the standard of youth, and they all have different standards. So I understand that it's super complicated. But even in the midst of all this, some places still decreased because Chungcheongbuk-do, Danyang increased the age range to 49. 49 back in 2017.
You're forcing them back into youth.
Exactly. Yeah, you're a youth, and it still decreased. The population of youth still decreased 10% over the course of 5 years.
You briefly mentioned that this is because local authorities want to keep young people within their region. But Xiong, could you also elaborate on other reasons why we have
Yeah, I mean, so as now mentioned, and as we know in Korea, different provinces in South Korea differ drastically in their conditions as well. So we have about 20% or 10 million of the country's population living in metropolitan Seoul itself. More rural areas lack a younger population, as many leave their hometown to either study or work in the country's capital.
Right.
Therefore, the local authorities are forced to expand youth age group categorization to a higher age to successfully execute their youth support programs, as otherwise they will simply not be able to spend their entire allocated funding.
And I think based on wherever we are, we're safely still under the category of youth for sure.
Are we?
Hopefully, right?
I mean, we are, I guess, but you know, now our elder cousins, people who are
on the borderline.
You know, our managements, our managers are coming back into
they
the same
didn't make
youth
the
category.
cut. Exactly. So I would like to ask you two youth here in the studio where you guys stand on this issue. Are you for or against extending the age frame of whom we consider youth, starting with now?
Yeah, I'm not super for it because it's not really a smart resolution for the long run. I understand that we have a decreasing population of youth, but just because you include more people in this category does not, we shouldn't look away from the fact that we do have a decreasing population.
Right.
And, you know, maybe then we should distribute the funds, like Xiong was mentioning, because if they're not able to use it all, then maybe we should use it in different, I guess, categories and different age groups.
More direct support.
Yeah, and they should maybe focus a little bit more on immigration or pro-birth policies to make more youth for the future. And yeah, I think because this is where all our tax money is heading, definitely would be wise to spend it in a
wise manner.
Yeah.
I completely agree, because some people might ask, you guys are young, why do you guys care about this question itself, like who we consider to be youth? It's because it all has to do with our tax money, for sure. Where do you stand on this issue?
I mean, I'm kind of pro extending the age limit as well. I mean, the aforementioned Framework Act on Youth was implemented to provide effective youth policies to solve problems such as youth unemployment, low birth rate and marriage rates, as you mentioned, and housing issues related to the ever so high real estate prices, especially in the capital city, Seoul. So I think the current support programs do provide a decent definition of eligibility in the sense that it has flexibility in age groups when necessary, whilst allowing grants and additional support for the socially and financially vulnerable members of the society. And more people are spending time on higher education and training courses to achieve their ideal jobs, on top of mandatory military service for the Korean men, which push the age of financially independent up the scale. So I see the extension of age limit when necessary as a positive move, especially when the allocated budget is not fully utilized. So if our tax money is going to be allocated, distributed into local governments or metropolitan government, different cities, we might as well use the full extent of it and increase the age limit when necessary. So the actual, well, they might not be young in our sense, in the conventional sense, but if they receive funding, they could be more active in society. They could achieve a better goal, make a better living, and possibly even get a better housing, contribute to the country.
But it's definitely a tricky issue because with longer life expectancy, I think it's really hard to consider what's young. I mean, when I talk to my dad, he's in his 50s and he still considers himself in his 20s. And he's like, I'm youthful.
I mean, if he's going to live to 150, by ratio is still youth.
That is true. Exactly. That's why I think it's now a good time to compare our policies with those abroad. So now, could you tell us how other countries define youth and what type of welfare programs or policies they have that maybe we could blueprint off of?
Right, like different regions in Korea, different countries have various definitions of youth. And in Europe, there's this policy called the Youth Guarantee, where all members of the EU guarantee a quality offer of employment for different types of youth. And they also provide opportunity to continue their education or go into different types of apprenticeships. In France, it's actually for age 15 to 25. And Denmark, Finland, Sweden, and Belgium have raised their upper age limit all the way up to 34 years. And New Zealand also has the same policy, but they also give grants for free for people to study.
Right.
All right, I see. And we're now going to include a sociology expert to expand our discussion. We'll join him right after this. To find out why we really need to be thinking about this topic, we're going to add a sociology expert in our talks. It's Zach Almquist, the editor-in-chief from the Journal of Mathematical Sociology. Great to have you with us, Zach.
Hello,
Zach.
Great to be here.
Welcome.
All right, Zach, I'd like to ask you the first question. Why does defining youth matter, and why should our generation specifically be interested in this issue?
This is a complex question, and I really like it. What is youth in the modern world is a really changing question. So, the UN typically defines it between 15 and 24, but as the whole world ages, we tend to see older, people who wouldn't have been considered youth as younger now. And youth is sort of that transition from, when people can vote, when people can run from office. It gives you your sense of when people are going to graduate college, when people should be expected to buy a house, have children, move up in their careers. And so whatever people think of as the normative age is going to affect, when they look around and saying, am I doing well? Are other people doing well? What should my expectations be? And I think this sort of definition of youth that comes out by the federal governments and by media and social organizations will really shape how people think of themselves as doing.
Yeah, I mean, Zach, as well as you've given some good definitions, it does really confuse us because a lot of the times when the governments are trying to provide some support programs, youth age groups differ, you know, and usually, conventionally, we had the financial and social status to define them. But any benefits or drawbacks from extending the age group of youth? I mean, is it an effective solution for the future?
I mean, it's going to change, like you guys have been talking about, the adjustment of money, right? So if we change the category to be larger, people will have access to the funds that we allocate by policy for youth there, but we'll lose the ones for older. As we have an aging population, right, we're going to need more and more money for people as they go into elder care facilities. So that could be a big issue. We maybe expect people to get into the workforce later, but maybe we really need them to get in the workforce earlier. I mean, maybe we really want to define it the other way, right? Shrink the youth.
Yeah.
Right. My last question for you is, how does U.S. define youth, and what are some related welfare policies for this age group?
So generally speaking, the youth definition in the U.S. Is typically around the UN definition, loosely, you know, 18 to 24. There's some clear examples that are different. So healthcare in the U.S., you know, is attached to people's employment. So if you're unemployed, you can be really hard to get healthcare in the U.S. If you're still in that youth category, you can be on your parents' health insurance. So that's a huge deal, right? You can get access to care without being employed. You know, voting happens sort of at the end of youth. Youth kind of ends when you can run for federal office. So when you turn 25, all of a sudden you can. Yeah, exactly. And other things like you can rent a car easier. Getting out of that youth category gives you access to a lot of things. But of course, it also, you lose things like access to healthcare, easier access to college, that sort of thing.
Then I'd like to ask you one more question, Zach. Here in Korea, it seems that local authorities are trying to extend the definition of youth for, you know, better welfare, better economic activity. Are you for or against that?
I think as much as people need it and like they're doing the work and understanding what's needed as sort of the population ages, you know, the median age in the US now is like 38. I think in South Korea it's around 43. That's a big shift from you look 20, 30 years ago, right, where it would have been closer to like 30. And, you know, you go back even farther and it would have been in like the mid-20s. So thinking about how to deal with that social and economic change is always, I think, good. And, you know, as long as people are figuring out correctly where the allocation of money should be going for the different age groups,
you know, let me word that better. I think this might be a better question. You mentioned elder care as well. Do you think it's more beneficial in the points of, you know, the millennials and Gen Zs as well, whether we should fund elder care or youth support? What do you think would be more ideal?
I mean, I like looking forward on the youth side. I think the elder care is going to be one of the biggest social issues of the future. It's massively looming here in the US. I can't imagine it's not massively looming in South Korea. And we just don't have the workers to support and staff everything. So thinking how to manage that is going to be a big deal.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. That was Zach Almquist, the editor-in-chief from the Journal of Mathematical Sociology. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach.
All right, and before we continue our talks, we're also going to hear from our global viewers and how they define youth. Take a look at the screen to find out. Shay Luna Midnight said, I think you can have a youthful state of mind. However, anyone who is 40 years and older is a grown-up. Makarungi said, I think the age of youth could be 20 to 35 years, and that's international age. Hussein Demir said, I think anyone below the median age of the country can be considered youth. It's 44 for South Korea and 39 for the U.S., which Zach also mentioned. Now, before we end off, I'd like to ask you guys the same question. How can we define youth? What's your personal definition now?
You know, as much as we say that youth is a state of mind, when it comes to government policies and support, I would say it's around 30, you know? And after 30, a lot of people come to a different stage in life, whether it be their careers, you know, their physical state, or with their families. And, you know, perhaps there should be another category between youth and middle age.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, and I mean, we say age is just a number, but you know, with age comes experience and knowledge that serves as an advantage over your younger self.
Right.
So I mean, to be honest, you know, but if you have, you know, if you start from not much education, poorer social background and things like that, with age, you'll come with experience. You might have figured yourself out, a way out as well, have a proper job, make a good income and salary. And for that reason, in providing public support for the youth, I kind of think we should actually just limit it up to maybe the age of 30.
Okay.
And I mean, that makes sense to give them a bit of a competitive advantage rather than people who are already in their 40s, who've lived quite a long life and seen how to go about in the world. If they're doing okay when they're 40, that means they kind of figured themselves out by then.
Right.
And considering what used to be the 2 years mandatory military service for the Korean men, losing 2 years of your crucial years of your life, of your youth, I think maybe being more lenient and giving them up to age 35.
Right, consider that,
yeah, it would be a good idea as well for different programs, different funding and things like that.
And Xiao, I'd like to ask you the last question, like how you would like to see youth policies go, because during the interview you asked a really important question. With society aging, should we focus more on senior welfare or more youth? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, to be honest, for policy improvement, I think we must have legislative support. So I can suggest a few legislative improvement measures. First, enacting follow-up laws for the realization of specific youth policy. Second, the establishment of support system for youth organization and facilities. Third, establishment of youth funds, as well as distinct allocation of function between the state and local governments. And last, but most importantly, strengthening the participation of youth in the process of determining youth policy.
And hand in hand, I think what should go is more support for senior welfare policies, because as much as it's important to define youth, we should also be considering what we're going to be doing.
Like pre-support and post-support.
Exactly, post-support.
You got to balance it right, so there's no, destruction of either side.
Balance is key. Exactly. And all right, that's all we have for you today. We'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Kim Seong.
My pleasure.
And Niall Song.
No problem.
Thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are
News Generation.